Welcome to the Tech Sharmit podcast, where technology is not just news, but the roadmap to the future. This is a space where we explore the latest tech trends, AI, startups, gadgets, and the ideas that redefine the way we think. Leading this conversation is Amit Sharma, globally recognized as Tech Sharmit. A technologist from Bharat, Amit brings an Indian perspective to the global technology landscape. With deep technical expertise and strong industry insight, and for his contributions and impact within the global tech community, he has been recognized with several prestigious honors, including Google Developer Expert, Microsoft MVP, IBM Champion, and Planet Mainframe Influencer. Through this podcast, he shares practical knowledge, real-world perspectives, and globally relevant thinking designed to help you stay ahead in an ever-evolving technology landscape. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Tech Sharmit channel to stay updated with future episodes. And if you're looking to level up your skills, don't forget to explore the Tech Sharmit digital course book in the description box, where you'll find thousands of free programming courses curated to help you grow as a developer. So plug in your headphones and join us as we begin today's episode of the Tech Sharmit podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today, I'm joined by another very special guest, Matthew Christiansen, who is joining us all the way from United States. If I talk about Matthew, then he is an Angular Google developer expert and a software engineer at Limble, with prior experience as a CTO at Brightbridge Web. So, in today's episode, we will talk about the front-end architecture, Angular at scale, AI in web application, and also we will know what it really takes to evolve as an engineer over the time. But before we get started with these all things, I would like to thank Matthew for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us a bit about yourself.
Hello, yes. So a little bit about myself. I've over the past 15 years been doing software engineering. And back when I got started, I was starting kind of as a entrepreneur. I began by building websites with like freelancing with a tool called Upwork. And as I was there, I eventually found clients on the platform and thought, maybe I can make a business out of this. So I just hired some like local teenagers and taught them how to code. And we just coded together. We were like working from my studio apartment and having fun. And then, eventually grew that to 20 employees
Mhm.
and had a company where we built over 180 applications, including for Fortune 500 companies. But eventually I decided that I wanted to get back to just software engineering because that transferred from me leading code and being a CTO to doing a lot of sales and a lot of kind of having to deal with CEO things. And so I sold that and joined Limble, which is kind of my childhood dream as a kid. I loved like building conveyor belts for fun and like building machines, and like kind of just that kind of stuff. And Limble is a company where we build maintenance software that like these type of companies use to kind of keep the world running.
Okay. So, as you mentioned about that interesting shift from CTO to again working as a software engineer at Limble. And that's a quite very interesting direction because because you are passionate about the coding and writing the actual codes, so you shifted this way. So what you think, like what did you learn about yourself in that transitioning moment when you shift yourself from CTO profile to this software engineer at Limble?
Yeah, I learned that I like to identify more as an engineer than I do as a CEO.
Okay.
And there's a special like magic that comes with being a part of the creative process
Mm-hmm.
that is great to be in now. And it's a fun shift because when you're the CEO, CTO, you see one side of things and you're like, man, why do employees do this? What blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Then when you're an employee, you're like, oh my gosh, leadership. What's with leadership? Like do this and that, you know? And so it's been fun because now, being in the trenches, I can also kind of again like advocate for certain things about leadership, like, like, hey, give them a break. They have a lot on their shoulders, like don't overread into everything leadership is saying.
Correct. I think this is the best way to see the both sides of the coin because now you have exposure of both profiles. You know how CTO looks at the task and how a developer looks at the task. That's a great, interesting thing.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah. So now, Matthew, we will talk about your contribution to the IT as a software engineer or as a CTO because you led a delivery of 180 plus application, which will also include some of the Fortune 500 companies, right? As a CTO. So, what do you think? Like, what's the one thing from that chaos that permanently changed how you approach the software architecture today as a software engineer? Did you notice anything there? Any one thing?
Absolutely. The number one thing is prioritize security.
Okay.
When I was running my company, there was a point when I was just out of college, like living in a little apartment, and I got hacked on AWS by Bitcoin farmers, and they hacked my account for like $30,000.
That's a huge.
And so that was very, very painful. In a way, it forced me to need to make a lot more money, so that was grow the business. But like, it taught me very, very strongly to be very aware of vulnerabilities and security. And now, as an engineer, it's something that's always top of mind for me. And I think especially in the age of AI, where it's becoming more accessible for people to have certain models that they could hack with and stuff like that, it's very critical that we're thinking about security during development. Oh, and especially for vibe coding, like because now anyone can just vibe code and they're like, hey, I built this app, and like it's live and I have customers and honestly, those people are hiring engineers now, a lot of them. So like I feel like there's this phase, right, where everyone's like, "Oh, AI is taking our jobs because now engineers aren't needed as much." Well, at the same time, people were vibe coding apps that now need engineers. So I feel like engineering's in a good spot again.
That's a great thing because yes, this is true that everyone is saying that it is going to take out your jobs or it is impacting your career. But yeah, we have other side of it as well. And you also mentioned one very interesting as well as very important thing regarding the security because doesn't matter if you are working as a developer, CTO, or any other profile, you should
Yeah.
always consider that security aspect in your work because as a developer also if you are writing, let's say if you are writing a logic to call an API, so always make sure that yes, whatever information you are providing, whatever link you are exposing, make sure that it is correct or it is intended to do. Otherwise it might cost a lot, not only for you but for the entire company as well. So that's a great thing
Yeah.
you shared.
Yeah. Yeah. Hide those environment variables and make sure you're safe against SQL
Yes.
injection, all that stuff.
Right. Right. Okay, so now Matthew, we will talk about the Angular because this is one of your core expertise area, right? You are Angular Google developer expert. So when did Angular go from framework I used to think I want to be champion in it? Because this is a thing you started for sure with Angular earlier days, and then you decided that yes, this is the same technology where you want to become a champion. So, what was there any specific project, a particular moment that inspired you to contribute as an IBM developer, or sorry, as an Angular developer, and then later you become the GD in this specific domain?
Yeah, wonderful question. So for me, it was around Angular 16, 17, 18 as Signals came out and became more stable. So, like, maybe this is like some people don't think this one's as big of a deal, but it was a big deal for me. Control flow syntax, like the at ifs instead of ng ifs, just because the devx of both of these things is incredibly improved. And so I feel like before these, Angular was like a platform that I liked, but I felt like was overly complicated with, observables and RxJS, and there was just a lot of things to track and things that could go wrong. I still think back then maybe it was one of the best for like enterprise, but I feel like now it's become extremely accessible to everyone, and it's still at the core, in my opinion, is the best framework because of the way that you can ng generate component and just like, scaffold those together in a good way. Now, don't get me wrong, you can shoot
Mhm.
yourself in the foot with a nail gun, but it is a nail gun. Like it can do everything. It can, and one of the misconceptions people have is like, oh, use React because I want to use GraphQL. Angular can work with GraphQL wonderfully. It can do everything that React can do, but has just, I think, is organized in a way I love. And so as I fell in love around that time in the Angular community meetup, kind of became a co-organizer with, got a shout out, Brooke Avery and
Yes.
Chris Perko, and just, applied to the GDE program, had a wonderful conversation interview with Mark Thompson, and uh, have had some, talked with a lot of fellow GDEs, and just like the more I get into Angular, the more I love it. And I feel like the later releases are just getting more cool stuff every single time. I'm a big fan for all those reasons.
Okay. So here I would recommend all those developers who are new to the Angular, please go and check out the signals and just try to figure out like what were the things in Signal that inspired Matthew to start with this Angular framework, and later this path or this contribution led to become him the Google developer expert in the Angular framework. So I'm sure like you will found so many interesting thing there, and you will love to explore that too. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Matthew, like you are leading this Angular adoption in large scale system as well for Limble, right? So that also uses Nest and Go. So what do you think? Like, what's the hardest part about keeping the front end teams aligned when the backend team is that polyglot, right? So we have a mixed of teams. So how you make sure that yes, everything is aligned properly throughout your process?
That is a great question. I think one of the keys is using maybe something like GraphQL. Like maybe that could be the right move for you if you have a polyglot environment, because you can create a contract at the front end to the back end with, when you have many microservices. But I think like approaching that also from a different angle, I think that it's important to be willing to learn new frameworks. Like I know some engineers who see that the stack they're working at has many backend frameworks, and they say, hey, I'm just a front-end engineer, I'm not going to understand it. But I think when you're working in an environment like this, especially with AI, where it's so easy to learn things pretty quickly, I
Mhm.
think it's very valuable today as a front-end engineer to, look at the backend code, understand the database, understand the structure of what you're working with. So when you're connecting to it and you're making your queries and such, that you're having good structure.
Okay. Okay. Before we move to the next part of the discussion, I just want to take one more question regarding the Angular, because somewhere we all know that Angular has had a reputation for battle against React for years, right? So, as a Google
Mhm.
developer expert in this domain, what do you tell developer who might ask you the question like, why should we go for Angular in 2026 if we have any other other options available in React or other frameworks are there. So what is something special? One thing you already mentioned about Angular, that is signals. Other than that, what are something special that you feel to share with them?
Yes. So for 2026, um, we recently got signal-based forms
Mhm.
in Angular, and these these are kind of making creating forms really easy and effective. And then comparing it to React, I just want to go back to the structure, like in 2026, but kind of before too, is first of all, Angular does not use the virtual DOM. So you can, with Angular, you can make components, you can inspect, you can see them right there. With React, you're like downloading the React tools. They have this new like tool that will let you see the different components you're working with, but it's
Yeah.
very hard to actually observe what's going on from an inspect element perspective, from a debug perspective. So Angular just for that alone for me is significantly easier to debug and track down in the inspect element with the not having the virtual DOM. And so yeah, then the other thing again, just being signals and signal-based forms, something I highly encourage people to look into. They can handle uh, forms and datas and like state in a way that is, I think, way more intuitive than React and requires less of this like custom hook type architecture. You know, like you're with React, you're like sometimes just constantly querying your GraphQL or whatever, like because you don't even want to think about it with the end. Like, okay, with Angular, you can shoot yourself in the foot because you can do a lot more easily with the front end. But if you are smart about it, then you're more performant than React as well, and you just have more options.
Okay. So I think this will give a clarity to all those who are comparing the React or maybe other framework with the Angular. So now you have these areas, just try to explore it and see like how it can be useful for for your projects, and then only decide like which one is the right path to for you to explore.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, we talked about the benefits. Now, I just want to see some mistakes as well, because we all know that
Yeah.
everyone has to deal with the issues or common pitfalls are there, right? So, what do you think? Like, what
Yeah.
are the common mistakes you see teams make when they are scaling an Angular code bases? And what do you think? Like, which one causes the most pain in the long term out of all those mistakes? One mistake that will for sure impact in the longer go. So, what are those common pitfalls?
Yes. Yeah. So kind of, I think I alluded it to a bit in my last response, but I would say the biggest pitfall I have seen in various Angular applications is doing too much logic on the front end that should
Yeah.
live in the back end. And
Mm,
then down the road, you try to jitify it and you spend a long time like trying to move front end logic back into the back end. And
very important.
yeah, it's not fun. So I would say try like anything that's business logic that can go in the back end would consider like and especially working with the database, I'd consider like performance optimization up front as much as you possibly can. But part of that also means good database architecture. So
Yes.
like if you can't do it yourself, or like if there's not someone on your team that can do it, then hire someone who understands, first, second, third normal form, because that is going to get you in big trouble down the road if you don't have that done right.
Right, right, exactly. I'm also agree. And also, I think this is great advice for all the developers. Like if you are using Angular or maybe other framework, front-end framework, always make sure that you are not putting unnecessary business logic or complex code inside the Angular, because this will impact you. Yes, as Matthew mentioned, that it will not only impact your performance, but in the future you will find out yourself into a trouble because you have put unnecessary things into the front end part. So that's a
Yep.
great learning for all. I hope you all can understand this pain point, and maybe in the upcoming projects you will improve these things as well.
Yep.
Okay, so now I think, Matthew, it's the right time to talk about the AI, because in 2026 we all know that AI is something that is everywhere, right? Doesn't matter if
Yep.
you are the technical background, non-technical background, you have to work with AI and you have to adopt it, right? So
Yep.
here I would like to ask you one question regarding the Gemini and agentic AI, because you speak on both of these topics frequently. So what does just for those audience like who are from maybe from non-technical background or maybe early in their career, so what does this agentic actually mean in the production front-end context? Okay, and what when does it break down in the real world scenarios? So how you will showcase this thing to someone like who don't have that much of exposure and also they wanted to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So agentic AI, I think that you can really go two directions with that today. Like like when people hear that, they're thinking two things. And and I mean maybe there's more than these two things, but the two things that I would highlight is one, right now we got anti-gravity, we got cursor, we got Claude
Yes.
Code. And so using agents um, with these that leverage AI to create your code bases is one thing that's going on big time with agentic AI. Like, and so if you're listening to this and you haven't used any of those things, like, then I highly recommend, go download anti-gravity or one of these IDEs and, um, try some of the latest models, try the latest Gemini and see how it can improve your workflow because now like most people I'm working with it's 90% of our code we're using AI to generate it just because you can do things in an hour that took a week and now you need to review your code better than ever though, right? Because AI can make some terrible mistakes still. But so that's one thing. But then the other thing is, like generative agentic AI. And so um, like you can connect Gemini into your code base to build an AI application. And that's another thing I think all engineers should start looking into learning and trying out. Google has a Build with AI campaign going around, so local Google developer groups probably have some Build with AI training that could get you in on this. But Google search Build with AI. Look at some tutorials on how to set up like a Gemini AI generated like app that could generate like random names of something or something like that and play around with it. And it's like it's an age where we all need to learn how to train a model now
Yes,
because
yes.
there's a lot of that happening on both sides of that coin right now.
Correct, correct. Yeah, in fact, we can clearly say that AI is learning itself very fast, right? Doesn't
Yep.
matter like as a human if you are learning it or not, but it is actually learning itself. Like earlier, we know that we were playing with the Chat GPT, then things change, Gemini, Claude, and now they have that ability to directly access your code. They can perform all the
Yeah.
tasks. So it is learning and improving day by day. So I think this is the
Yep.
right time to explore these areas and see like how you can make it work in your projects.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you're whoa guys, I'm a super advanced engineer. I know all this stuff. Well, okay, start looking into like MCPs, like start like looking into using like setting up Gemma, like your own local AI. There's some really cool things you could do now. Like there's some companies that are getting uh 10x performance by having very expensive hardware setting up their own
Yeah.
AI. So there's a whole bunch of directions to go right now, and I think we're no longer it like there used to be a point when it was like the age of what you know, and then Google came out, and then it was like the age of like how hard you can work, and now with AI, it's like it's more like the age of like how creative you can be because you can do a lot with AI without working so hard that you could used to have to work so hard for. But if you're creative and you think of creative ways to use AI, you can be very productive today.
Okay. Now, although we have lots of things that we can discuss here, but we are short on time, so I just want to take a couple of more questions before we conclude the discussion. And I just want to take one more question on Firebase and Gemini. Because
Mhm.
Fireplace plus Gemini is a pairing you work a lot, right? With
Yep.
which you work a lot. So, what's the best use case that surprised you? Something that worked better than the expected way when these two terms, Firebase and Gemini, put together for any of your task or tool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I alluded to my woes with AWS earlier in the call. But Firebase is like so quick and easy to set up. And with Gemini, it's wild. Like one time I did a demo and I had Gemini integrate my app and deploy it on Firebase directly from the CLI in like 5 minutes. So, uh, like I would say the thing that works better than I expect is how easy and quickly you can get an app deployed with Firebase.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now I think, Matthew, it's the time to know about the support of network. With that, what I mean, like, I believe like behind every person, there is a support of network, especially in IT industry, we know that how we all are learning from each other. So looking back on your own journey, like who were the key people around you who had a defining impact on your journey so far?
Yeah, yeah, I got to give a shout out to, first of all, Brooke Avery, who, as I mentioned earlier, is another GDE and has really brought me into the program. And um, we do the Dev Life podcast together, and we've just had done a lot together, and it's been great working with her.
Yeah.
And then I call shout out my dad, Rich Christiansen. He taught me business when other kids were, I mean, maybe this sounds sad, but when other kids were throwing a baseball, he was teaching me business. And that's how I started my business when I was young. But I appreciate that and all he taught me. And then my brother, John Christensen, he's an awesome engineer also and just a great man. My mentor, Ben, and manager at Limbo, Ben Johnson, and my other one, Nick Teffler. They've both just been incredible leaders and examples to me. Then also Adam Dunn has been a mentor to me, as well as Caleb Holt. So those are my shout outs.
Yeah. So yes, in fact, regarding the Brooke, like we did a podcast together, and it was fun. Really, like the way she explained the things, it was very
Yeah.
interesting, and it also got a great response from the audience as well. So yeah, she's doing good.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
awesome.
Yes. Okay. So now, before we conclude the discussion, I just want to take one more question to know one bit more about the country from which my guests belong. So, as a proud citizen of United States, what do you think? Like, what is one thing about your country that you feel to proudly share with the global audience? One thing that is close to your heart.
Yeah. I think one thing close to my heart in the United States is kind of the American dream. I feel like I've lived it a bit, like I came out of being in a studio apartment, like eating top ramen to starting a business that was successful and I'm grateful, to that I'm in a country where that was possible. So very, very proud of America and the American dream and that's what I'd share about it, I guess.
Okay. All right. So yeah, thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us this in this episode and for sharing so much information regarding the Angular, Firebase, Gemini, and all other AI too. I'm sure those who are listening to this podcast, they will resonate a lots of things from this episode as it is very insightful. So thank you once again for being a part of the show.
Thanks, Amit.